Hey lads, pretty excited. Today I'm going to be going to the Phoenix Saturday Action Tournament. It's 4 rounds Swiss and 25 minutes each game with 5 seconds delay. Much more my time control. I find that when I play classical tournaments I have way too much time and I want to abuse the clock as much as I can in these tournaments. However, it would be good to think a bit more than I have been. And I think 25 minutes is going to be amazing. So I'll try to play some solid chess today. I'm playing in the under 1700 section and I'm excited. So let's jump into the games and see how we do.
Game 1 we played against a young boy named Rayanch and his rating was 1686. At the start of this tournament my rating was 1482. I had played Rayanch but I had forgotten that I had played him. We never played in an over-the-board game like officially. We just played while we were waiting at a tournament. And he said, "Do you want to play?" I said, "Yeah, let's play." And I actually beat him with the Jobava. So I wish I had remembered that. Might have given me a bit more confidence. But seeing a 1686 definitely made me feel a wee bit intimidated. He played the move e4, so he went right into a Caro Kann. It was the exchange variation. And so I developed my knight to c6 like normal, and then because his knight was on f3, I was able to pin it to the queen. So he brought his bishop out to d3 along this diagonal. I was feeling very comfortable here. The typical ideas in the exchange Caro Kann is you just want to get your pieces here developed. So often the knight can come over here, and the bishop can come out to e7. You castle your king. And then you go for a minority attack. That's sort of your whole plan. So this is what we kind of went for. I brought my bishop to d6 because it looked a wee bit stronger. His knight comes to bd2, knight f6, and his queen came out immediately attacking a pawn. So I don't want to just give him a free piece. So I thought, where is my queen best situated? And I put it on c7 just so that it could line up with this bishop looking at this pawn. If I'm able to take here, I could maybe win a free pawn. He pushed the pawn. I retreat my bishop. You never want to take the knight unless you're fighting over the d4 pawn. And I'm not fighting for the d4 pawn because his pawn's on c3, defending it. So I'm just wanting to keep my bishop. Maybe I can put it here and swap off with his beautiful light squared bishop along that diagonal. He castled, I castled, his rook comes to a file that is probably going to open up. He probably wants to push here at some point. So I just played a6 so that no bishop could come here. I could prepare b5 and just defend the c4 square. He swings his rook over to the half open file and I play b5. So everything is looking fantastic. A completely even game, no mistakes on either side, and now we're starting to look at some maybe tactics. What's going to happen? He plays a4. And on this move, I thought I have a slight edge. The analysis is telling us that we're up 0.44 here as black. So I do have a slightly improved position if I can find the right moves. And the idea here is this beautiful c4 square looks lovely for my knight. So let's try get it there. We attack his queen with knight to a5. He has to move his queen, so he pulls back onto this very dangerous diagonal, and I put my knight on c4. Now, he could just take here, but if we're able to recapture, his bishop's going to have to retreat to a terrible square. And then I can put my bishop on g6 looking at his queen. And I just have a beautiful position. My pawn would have taken here. And we would just be going after his backwards pawn on b2. And his pieces would be on bad squares, not able to protect. My pieces could get into the fight much quicker. So I definitely felt pretty good about this overall. He played the best move, bishop g5. He doesn't take here. And understandably why. It was in this position that I had a serious think. This is where I learned something from this tournament. And I'm trying to apply this into all of my games going forwards from now on. It's not necessary for me to make threats and go for checkmate. I can instead just improve slowly. But what I thought about this position was, if this pawn can take on f6, I can get a rook to the g file and really go after this king. I could even get both rooks, and both of them could be focused on this king and go for a big attack. I don't need to do that. I have a beautiful knight over here. I can take this pawn. I can get my rook here and go after this pawn. You know, I can attack totally fine on the queen side and just positionally grind my opponent down. From now on, I think what I need to be doing is just making slow improving moves. And the move here that I had to decide between was bishop g6 or h6. And bishop g6 just looks lovely because bishop takes bishop, and then we can just recapture here. And my king is never getting checkmated. We have 3 pawns on these red squares. And his queen's over here, and he doesn't have a light squared bishop. How is he going to attack me? It's just not happening. I could even maybe move this rook over here, move my king over here at some point, and then move back and fight down the open H file if I have to. But honestly, I don't need to do any of that. I just need to go for an attack on this side of the board. But instead what I did was I thought I should open up the G file. And so I played the move H6. And so he took my knight. And this is what I'm thinking. Take his king. But I went for this. The best move here actually to sort of hold equality is to take his knight. But I took his bishop. And now he missed his opportunity of playing g4, giving me another chance to get rid of my terrible bishop. But he took this pawn on b5. I recaptured another blunder because he still has this move. And finally, he played it. I am in big trouble now. I have to put my bishop here. And if he takes, I take. His queen takes. His queen is 2 squares from my king. My king goes here. He's got at least a forced draw, but could easily start mopping up these pawns. After king h8, queen could come to f6 with another check. And it's just looking disgusting. So I did not want to go into that. Here I had a long think. And I came up with the idea of knight captures on d2. If he were to mistakenly recapture with the wrong piece, he's got a queen and a knight, then I could be okay. So if I captured here and he recaptured with the queen, well, now my bishop can come to this square. And yes, he can take, but I can take. He gets a pawn here, but I'm probably going to be okay. Even better than coming here, I have bishop f4. So I could just hit his queen and there's his rook. And so I'm going to be totally fine in this position. Queen has to go to d1 and then I can take c1. And now he takes this one, I take this one. So if he takes this one, well, then I can get this one out. And now I'm just doing well. So let's have a look. Queen c1, bishop g6, bishop takes, pawn takes, and now queen takes. I can just go g5 and put the rook here and go after the queen. Would have been great. I'm up material, but I didn't go into this line. Back in this position, I did take his knight. He recaptured with the correct piece. Knight takes knight. And now I just moved my king over. I thought if he's going to take here, I at least want to get my rook active on the king. He takes my pawn, and I go for this. He moves his king out of the way. I move my rook up, maybe thinking I could at least grab 2 pawns for the piece. I'm down 3 points of material right now. He moves over. I move my other pawn up because I saw, well, this is just hanging. I don't want to just let him have this. But he pushed here. And then in this situation, I thought, I'm losing big time. I need to just go all out. I went for the move e5. And I saw that if he takes here, well, we can recapture with rook. His king moves. And maybe we could take, and then maybe the other rook can get active, and then he moves back, and then maybe I could come over here and try to do something. It was all in my mind, but he just took this pawn instead on d5. He's looking at my queen, and I thought about this, because I thought take, and then if I get the rook here, he can come here, and then maybe I could take and get something going here, but I'm just too late with everything that I was thinking about. And after this, I just play the terrible move. E takes, because I want to open his king up. And this just gives him a free bishop. Capture. I throw in the check. He moves. I capture the queen back. He takes. And now he just got a knight and a bishop, and he just mops me up. I tried to play as best as I could, but he finds all the good moves. And here he sets up the checkmate. Nothing I can do here. He missed a checkmate and won, and I told him about this afterwards so that he felt bad. And he laughed and said, checkmate in one is fine. This way is just very solid, the way that he did it. And so I moved my pawn, and there's the checkmate. He played very well, and I should have played slower and more solid. I didn't need to open up the G file for my king. It was just me thinking I needed to be more aggressive. Probably been playing too much bullet chess and trying to go for these dumb attacks. Let's have a look at game 2. Game 2, I played against young Ethan, and I played against him a few tournaments back. I had the white pieces, and I had a very clean Jobava London victory against him. It was very, very straightforward. It was a game where he brought his double knights out. But this game, he decided to go for something much more interesting. And I think this is a good recommendation for someone who's just playing club games, club level, under 1800. I think you're going to do very well. He got a very nice winning position. I also didn't play so fantastic, but you'll see the result after we go through the game. I played d4, and he went for e5, the Englund, which I was excited to see. He's trying something. This is a longer time control than the rapid 10 flat that we have online. So maybe I'm not so worried, but I took the pawn. He attacks, I defend, he attacks, but he attacks with f6. This is called the deferred solar gambit, and I've never seen this move. I wasn't entirely sure what to do, but I thought, let's just stick with opening principles, and I'll develop. He goes b6, kind of like an Owen's defense here, putting the bishop on b7, looking at this knight maybe, trying to remove the defender of the pawn, and maybe he can win it back. Very interesting opening. I played e3. He puts his bishop on b7. Bishop comes out to c4, looking at this beautiful diagonal. He plays his own bishop out, looking at a pawn prism. I'm not too worried. I castle, just want to be safe, want to develop. He puts his queen on e7, defending this bishop, I suppose, but also putting more pressure on this pawn in the center. 3 attackers, and I only have 2 defenders. So I thought for a little while here, and then I played, let's just get rid of the pawn, just swap him off. I don't need to worry about it. Now, after playing this move, I thought, I was like kind of kicking myself. I thought I really should have captured this knight, and he would have taken here, and then I could capture here. And now he doesn't have a knight that he can develop. But actually, this is worse for me. He can just go g takes, and now his rook's looking at my king. So I'm glad that I didn't go for that stupid plan. Yeah, so in this position, I took the pawn with the pawn. He captured with a knight, allowing his knight to develop. And in this position, I got the greedy eyes and played a very greedy, stupid move. I don't know why I do this. I did it so quickly, so instinctively, and I need to just slow down and think. I grabbed the pawn on c7. He traps my bishop, and I move my knight in to g5. I am worried. I did this move because, yes, if he captures here, well, then I thought maybe we have a way to keep his king in the center. Maybe we can get my pieces attacking. And this is what we have to go for because I lost a piece, So in this position, he did take my bishop, and I throw in the check. I shouldn't have done this. A much better move would have been knight to e6, attacking this piece, attacking this pawn, and the queen has to just sidestep. And then knight c3, I can just start maybe improving all my pieces. and going for some nasty stuff. Maybe I come here and go for this one and just trying to be very, very annoying. His king can't castle right now, so I probably could have done this and been okay. But I went for the check, and this is just a terrible move because after he played king to e7, I'm in big trouble. He can just push this pawn, and I have to move my knight away, and then he wins my bishop. So I'm playing with fire here. I had thought if he moves his king to the wrong square, like let's say his king goes here, well, then I have knight e6, checking the king, winning the queen. If he had gone this way, well, I have knight e6, checking the king, hitting the queen. So I saw there was a lot of ways for him to mess up, so he can't go to either of these squares. But he could go to d7, and I thought this was the move he was going to play. I probably would have attacked his queen and tried to win this pawn. I'm just greedy for pawns. But he played this move, and after this, he's attacking my bishop, so I can't actually move my knight. So in this position, I hope and prayed, and I just developed my knight. And I knew h6 was crushing me, but my opponent didn't find it. He was stressed, he was thinking, and he played the move knight to e5. It gave me a glimmer of hope because now I can get this bishop to safety, and I'm not going to be destroyed when he plays h6. So I played the move knight to d5, checking the king and the queen, and he has to take my knight with one of his pieces. He took with the knight, I captured with the bishop, now my bishop's out of danger, and here he could have captured, but after the capture, I'm feeling okay. I'm just down 1 point of material. My queen is very active, my knight is very active, and my rooks can get into the center very quick. My king is safe and his isn't. So I was feeling good. But here, instead of taking my bishop, he played the move h6. And now the game is almost back to equal. I played my knight to e6, attacking the queen. He's got to move the queen. And here we captured a pawn for free. Now I have material back to equality. And I was feeling very good. Here, a much better move would have been c4, just solidifying my bishop on this square. But I didn't go for that. I just wanted pawns. He takes my bishop off finally, and I recapture. The game is equal now. His rook comes over to the g file, and here's where the game starts to get very interesting. I retreat my knight. He puts his knight onto g4. His idea with playing g4 was he's just trying to get the knight out of the way so that his rook can come in here and fork both of my pieces. And I saw this, and I knew this was going to happen, but I didn't worry myself about it because I knew that on a fork, I can get my queen out of danger with a check move. And so here I played a very sneaky plan, a3. And he looked at me like, what are you doing? Why are you playing a3? But I knew that this was okay. I actually missed a better move. I could have gone e4 first, but I didn't see this idea. Queen e4, king has to go to d8, and then h3, kicking this guy. And the knight, if it comes here, we capture it. If it comes here, which is probably more likely, we can go b4, and the bishop's trapped because the queen's holding it. But the way I played it was a3, preparing the bishop trap. I didn't see that after moving the queen, I could trap the bishop with b4. He didn't see that his bishop was going to get trapped, and he went for the fork. I checked, he blocked, I moved over out of the way, and I still have this threat incoming. His knight is in danger, but it is defended by the queen, but I have this plan on the table. He developed his rook to f8, and I attack his bishop. He swings his rook over, I check, he blocks with the knight, and now I can just defend my knight by moving it out of the way. It's defended by e3, and here he tries to get really crazy with the aggression, but I can just take if his queen takes. It looks like he's pinning me, but if he takes here, then he's no longer pinning me because his queen's not on this square. He does have a rook here, but I have a pawn, so I'm not feeling too bad. And even if he sacks and I take with the pawn, he still can't take here because my queen's holding g2 as well. So here, I just capture his bishop. He moves his king out of the pin. This piece couldn't move, and he just wants to get it in here. I can't take because my king would be in danger. And if I take here, he could recapture for free, and I can't capture back because the rook would be pinning the pawn to g2. So lots of tricks here. I just swing my rook over. I thought, let's develop. He moves his king out of danger again, wanting to sack here. I push the pawn up to f3. And here it was quite tense. You know, I thought this looks really dangerous, but I wasn't afraid. I saw that if he does take my knight, yes, this is checkmate. So I thought this is what he's going to go for. But I saw that I had some sneaky stuff. He took. I checked the king. He retreats. I check the king. He takes. And now I can capture the queen. So I was feeling okay about this. This is what happened. And now the rest of the game, we just trade off rooks. And I try to mop up his pawns. Very easy to do when you have a rook and they have a knight. And here I did a kind of a bad job of it. But here I sacked my rook. He took, I took. And I knew that my king was going to be able to promote here. And I went about this the longest way. Right now is a force mate in 4 moves. But look how many moves it takes me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had a force mate in 1 here. I don't know why I didn't go for it. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 moves it took me. But whatever. We got the win. Ethan played some very aggressive opening, and I thought it was very good. I think he should stick with it. He's just got to get a wee bit sharper with those tactics because he had opportunity there to win. I need to also not be so greedy. I should not just grab willy-nilly pawns and give up my bishop for free. So not good. But Ethan played very well. I enjoyed this game. I hope he enjoyed playing. I hope we both learned something. I hope you guys learned something. Let's jump into game 3. Game 3, my opponent didn't want me to share his name, so we'll just call him Big Bob. I had the white pieces, and I played d4. He played d6. I played knight c3, and he played knight f6. We're getting a Jobava London. This looks like a Pirc setup, and so if they go for the Pirc setup, it's always good to take control of the center before developing the bishop into the middle. He plays c6. I put my bishop on e3 instead, thinking we can maybe go for an English attack. And the bishop is better placed on e3 than on f4. He brings his bishop out. I attack it. He pulls it back. I attack it. He pulls it back. And I thought, this is just transposed into a pawn storm, a Jobava London pawn storm. So my bishop's not on the right square, but same sort of principles apply. So here he made the little hole for his bishop to escape to if I was going to play pawn h5. And here I played the wrong move. I played bishop d3. In this position, I really should be playing queen d2 and then maybe assaulting here and having a queen and bishop looking at the defense of the pawn. Because when I play here, this is a hook. However, bishop d3. He brings his other knight into the game. I go queen d2 now. He jumps into the center. Attacking before I can decide if I want to go for this or before I can decide if I want to go for long castle. Here I thought for a little while and played the move d5. Now, the best move here is just to develop more pieces and defend the pawn that's under attack. But I pushed. He took, and I took with pawn. I didn't take with knight because if I take with knight, he can move out of the way, and no longer do I have this nice little attack going. So I took with pawn, so he can't recapture here, because if he does, he just loses his knight. And he then took my bishop off. He wants to swap. If he didn't, I would have taken, and his pawns would have been doubled, and I would have a very nice and comfortable position. I recaptured the queen. He brings his queen out, and here I decided to long castle. Best move. Position's pretty good. I have a little bit of an edge, but not a ton. Here he develops his bishop to e7, and this signified to me that he probably wanted to short castle. I play the move knight g to e2, trying to just develop every single piece. He brings his knight forwards. Maybe he wants to come in here and go for an attack somewhere, just getting more pieces active. Maybe he wants to get his rook on this half-open file. I go for my break before this knight can jump away. Here he pulls his knight back. Here it would be an error to push the pawn because he can just castle, and after takes he can defend here, and he's doing totally fine. If he wants to short castle even, taking here, his rook becomes active. I don't have a bishop with my queen here, so I can't do a whole lot. So here I took the pawn, he recaptured, and I bring my rook over to the open file. Now, really, the rook was well placed here with the queen defending this pawn, and maybe I could have pushed this pawn and gotten my pieces, active on this side of the board, but I don't really think this was necessary coming over here. You'll see a little bit later why I have to move my rook back to d1, but he re-centralizes his knight here on f6, attacking this pawn 3 times, and it's only defended twice. So I need to bring my rook back. You can see that that was a mistake. So here I just decided I'll just try to simplify and swap everything off. Now he takes the pawn. I take his knight. He captures, and I want to throw in this check. If I get this check in, I'm winning, but this knight's defending the square. So how do we remove the defender? Gotta play rook to d1 again. So I shouldn't have thrown it over here. He takes the pawn on a2, not defending his knight, because if I were to take, then he could come here. I have to move, and he wins my rook. So I wasn't gonna just grab that knight for free. Here I just move my king over, attacking now 2 pieces, hitting his knight and his rook. He defends his rook with his knight, but I'm easily able to remove that defender by playing c3. So now he's going to lose a piece. He tries to just go out with attacking my knight still, but I can throw in the check here. Here his king can attack me, and so still my knight's in danger and his is in danger, but when I can capture his knight, I also put his rook in danger. So he has to defend his rook, and now my knight can jump to safety. He moves his king out of the fork because he doesn't want my knight to fork him. I attack his rook, and he pulls back, and we get the fork anyway. King moves, take the rook, he takes, and I'm just up a whole rook. This position is very good for me. He does have a couple extra pawns, but the position is only +5 for me, which is quite surprising. And he defends everything really well with this bishop move. I'm not able to move in, and this position was very difficult to play. We're actually on move 30 here, and the game lasts for 67 moves, which is kind of wild. I try my best to just get into his position and attack him. And here, like, if he goes the wrong way, this is a forced mate in 5. I can go rook d2. If he goes king g1 is his best move. Then knight e2, king f1, knight g3 check, king e1 is his best. Rook e2 check. King has to go here and then checkmate. So, like, if he did make one mistake, then there were forced mates on the board. But instead of playing to this square, he played his king to f4, and the game continues. Quite a long and drawn out endgame, trying to just grab material wherever I can. And I thought I'll just have to start pushing this pawn. Here I finally push it a little bit. He moves his rook out of the way. I take his bishop. He could have just gone here instead, but then I have a knight c3 check, hitting his king, king f3, and then I can take, and we get the queen. So the queen is going to be doing very good there. That didn't happen. He just moved his rook all the way over to g8, and so I capture the bishop for free. And still, I mean, I have a mate in 6, but it takes me quite a bit longer to find it. Just a long game of maneuvering. Finally, I swap off pieces there and get his rook. Here we just get the pieces and I start running down the board, and we finally get the checkmate with queen to e1. But took me a bit of time. My opponent played well. I thought his opening was fairly good, but he did have an advantage here after I played this stupid move, rook to g1, and then trying to trade off everything here with the queen check on b5. Here his big issue was taking the pawn with the wrong knight. If he had taken with this knight, then he's attacking me here, and my knight can't just capture and double the pawns. So that was his mistake. He took with the wrong knight, and now the position is fine for me. And here, this mistake of capturing the pawn while his piece was still in danger. I think it's those moments when you decide to not defend a piece that you really have to just ensure that your move is going to be okay. You really got to make sure that taking this pawn, I'm not going to do something so stupid as this, but I'm going to play the best move to attack two pieces at once. And I guess he just missed this idea, but that gave me the edge. Big Bob played really well. This is the final result. You can see he played with a 78.1. I played with an 83.3. Game 4 has an exciting finish, and I got to play against Big Edward. Edward is a big fan of the channel. He's been watching for a while, and we both have played each other in an over-the-board game where we drew. It was a crazy game, back and forth, but we drew. And then this game today, you're going to see the result of it. It was a pretty exciting finish, so you'll see what happens. Edward was rated a 14-15. I was playing the black pieces in this game, and he knew my Jobava London, he knew my Dutch, he knew my Caro Kann, and so he decided to play the ready opening f3, knight f3, so that I had to just sort of choose what I wanted to do. And against almost anything except for e4 with the black pieces, I generally go into the Dutch. So that's what we played this game. The opening moves looks like this. And here, his bishop is on e2. If the bishop is finqueroed, then I keep my bishop on c8. But if the bishop comes out onto one of these squares, my bishop becomes finqueroed, and generally that is best for black. So I castle, and we put our bishop on b7. If this had gone another way, where he did decide to finquero, we probably would have gone for a rapport Dutch, left our king in the middle, and tried to push Harry and go for a big attack. But this is how the game went. He played c4. Generally, you want to push on the queen side against the Dutch. When it's like this, he's doing all the right things here. I play d6. He brings his knight behind his pawn, very sensible. And here I play knight to e4 into the center of the board. Is he going to capture it and we're going to swap off? Or is he just going to maneuver his pieces? He maneuvers his pieces. He took a long time thinking about this move. But I captured his knight and he recaptured. And now I'm going for my typical Dutch break. If I'm able to get e5 in, then I'm going to be very happy. So e5 here comes with a pawn take. The queens see each other. Maybe he takes my queen and my rook claims the open file. But I have, most importantly, f5 and e5 together to aid me in an attack. So this is what I was going for. I push, he takes, I take, queens come off, and that is exactly what happened. His rook from the A file comes over to the D file, and I play the move knight to C6. Now, this is where things start to get a little complicated and crazy. Technically, the engine says his position is about a +1. I haven't really made any mistakes so far, nothing too major. There might have been some slight ways that I could have attained a better position, but I think here is where I needed to spend a bit more time to find out that specific sequence of moves that's going to help me. Because when his knight jumped in to b5, I was a wee bit nervous. Now, the engine says he's got a 0.4 advantage, so not quite half a pawn. But here I thought I'm going to lose my whole pawn. And you can see the stress I'm in here. The knight is attacking c7. If I defend c7, he can take my bishop, I take his knight, and now I have a backwards pawn on d6, which he can put his bishop here on a3 and attack. His rook's attacking. He could even double his rooks and have 3 pieces attacking. I'm probably going to lose this backwards pawn. I was not excited about this. I didn't know what other way to defend. I briefly looked at rook a to c8 and thought about that. I also thought about rook captures d1, rook captures d1, and then maybe my rook comes here to c8, or again, bishop to d6, but bishop to d6 falls into capture, and then the rook can capture. So I was really left with one choice, rook a to c8. And this is what I should have gone for. Maybe even rook d to c8. I don't know. I haven't looked at that. The engine's probably going to tell me it's terrible. Okay, it is terrible because of rook d7. Attacking here. Okay, I'm glad I didn't go for that. But the move that I went for was not the best move. This was clearly the best move to hold equality. I just didn't like the look of the rook on this square. And I also saw capture and capture. And then surely he wins this pawn here. That's what I was thinking in my brain. But this doesn't work because rook d2 hits both of his bishops. And that's a fork. He can't defend them both. So you can sort of see why I held off playing rook a c8. But the move I went for was bishop to d6. Didn't spend enough time thinking on that position. And so here he's able to secure a backwards pawn that he's able to attack. No other pawn can defend this pawn. And so he attacks with bishop to a3. I move my king in to defend. If he captures my pawn, I can attack with my rook and get very active here, winning a pawn back on a2. But here he just captured. I went for this plan. But instead of moving his bishop back, he played the move c5. I took c5. But then he takes. Now thinking I can come to d2, I just missed this move because I thought I could take this on the next move, but I didn't see that bishop to c4 was a check. So I moved in, c4 was the check, and so I have to move my king, and then he's able to save his pawn. Now, I started to get some ideas here about going knight to a5. Knight a5 attacks his bishop and his pawn, and if I'm able to take here, then if he captures, he's got isolated pawns on both of these squares, easy targets for my rook. I didn't go for knight a5 because I was really worried about rook to c1. However, I shouldn't be worried about that because this is a back rank. If he takes, this is checkmate. So I didn't need to be so stressed about this. He would have had to take, and now he's got 2 isolated pawns. Yes, he's up a pawn, but it looks like this is going to be a very drawn position. So I wasn't focused enough here, and I should have gone for this plan. So I didn't play knight a5. Instead here, I went for rook c2. I didn't want his rook to come here and be able to defend his bishop. However, this is giving him the open file. And even though he didn't go for it, he tried to just make a hole for his king. I went a6. He then does capture the open file, and now I'm in a bit of trouble. I had a very long think here, the longest think of the game, and I was just calculating what happens if I go knight a5. He comes here and checks me. Where's my king gonna go? I'm gonna probably have to go up to g5. Can he check me with his pawn? I take, he takes, I take. Can he check me with the bishop? No, because I would capture it. But I was just looking at this whole sequence of moves in my head, and I thought this looked okay for me, and I played the best move, knight a5. Here he goes for d6. I go king g5 like I had thought, and here instead of playing the pawn to f4, he plays rook d7, attacking my bishop, attacking my pawn. I'm a wee bit worried about this one. I'm not so worried about this one because it is defended. And so here I move my king to h6, defending g7. The best move here is actually just to check here and come back so that I'm targeting the pawn. Kind of lame, kind of boring, but I did protect my pawn on g7 instead. Here he moves his bishop, and in this position, I calculated a very sneaky trap. I calculated for quite a while here, but I came up with this plan, and I hoped that it was going to work. I took his bishop, thinking he could recapture here, but if he does, then he's got isolated pawns. I'm going to get my bishop to safety, and then I'm going to start working on gobbling these pawns up. If he instead takes my bishop, then I can maybe move in here and do some sneaky stuff. He did take my bishop, which is kind of a human move to do. And then I realized if I move my knight to d2, he can just take it off. I take, and now he's got these 2 pawns, and one of them's probably going to promote, and my pawn is not defended very well. He can just come here with a check and win the pawn. My rook would have been on this square, and I wouldn't have been able to defend. So instead of going here and allowing his bishop to take me, I thought I'll instead just attack his bishop, thinking his bishop's probably going to come to f8, which is what it did. And here I move my knight to d2. He mistakenly takes the pawn with his rook, intending some discoveries with a bishop check, winning my rook. But the game is already drawn, and I offer the draw in this position, which he accepted. I played rook c1, and we shook on a draw because he realized king has to come here, I can check. King has to come back, I can check. King has to come here, I can check. King has to come back, I can come here. King has to come here. That's a forced draw. There's nothing he can do to get out of it. And that's what I was going to do. I told him, I'm going to do the forced draw. Do you want to draw? And he took it. Quite funny that Edward and myself have drawn each other both times that we played. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this tournament. But I ended on 2.5 points. Edward ended on 3 points. So he got the 2nd place trophy. I was tied with about 5 other players for 3rd place. So I did gain a wee bit of rating, but not very much. This tournament got me from 1482 back up to 1493, which is my all-time peak. I was 1493 a few tournaments prior, and so if I do well in my next tournament, I should be able to cross the 1500 mark. This game with Edward was probably the most unlikely for me to win. He played very solid. I never had an edge. But for some reason, the engine told me that I played with an 84.1 and my opponent played with an 81.9. That doesn't make any sense to me because he was winning the entire game and I was just defending. But chess.com's engine, I don't know. It's interesting. I love playing this tournament. Hope you all enjoyed watching, and I will see you all very soon.